last two episodes, I had covered how industrial automation started in India, and it started with drives and also the applications where it was getting used. We saw some of the applications starting from the steel mill in the replacement of mercury arc rectifier, and then we said that the paper industry was one of the first adopters of DC drives. It was more in the line shaft to start with, but later it moved on to sectional paper machine drives. By about 1978-79, new projects of paper mills were coming. Some of them were expansions of existing mills, and some were new mills. Some were small plants and some were very large plants. The most important plants that came up during that period was two plants, Sri Rayalaseema paper mills, which was a 180 ton per day paper mill at Kurnool, and Sri Bhadrachalam Paper Mills Limited put up by ITC at Bhadrachalam in Sarapaka, both in Andhra Pradesh. These were the two paper mills that were coming, and these were very large machines, and therefore the single line shaft drives would not work. These were all using multi-sectional DC drives using thyristor drives. So these two paper mills which were coming, one was Sri Rayalaseema Paper Mills at Kurnool, which had a capacity of 180 tons per day, and it was a large machine being supplied by Jessup in collaboration with Belloy of UK, and Bhadrachalam Paper Boards, which was an ITC company with a capacity of 120 tons per day, but it was actually paper board, which means it was used more for packaging. And both these plants were pretty large, and the suppliers of machines were pretty large. And the drive suppliers at that time who were offering their systems was Larsen & Toubro, Nelco, Cutler Hammer, Siemens, and of course DBK Electronics, which was a starter company, as I mentioned, and where I worked. The specifications were all pretty tight. So in case of these large paper machines, as you know, the processes are the same, but then they have pretty large ratings, and big machines having the same processes. That means they have basically a wet section, then a press section, a dryer, a calendar, and then a pope reel. Now each of these sections are driven by individual motors, and in case of dryers, because there are number of rollers are quite large there, the dryer are driven by a number of motors, and all of them are individually driven by thyristor converters, and these thyristor converters have to be coordinated such that the machine is able to run at a constant speed. As you know, paper from the wet end to the dry end, it goes through a lot of shrinkages, and as a result, the speed differentials between section to section has to be very accurately managed and controlled. So it was not a very easy job to start with because the technology was new. One of the major things that actually went in favor of DVK in those days was that the paper mill essentially liked to talk in their own terminologies. One of the terminologies that used to be talked about always used to be the draw. The draw is the differential speeds between section to section. While, normally as an electrical engineer, some of our competitors would tell them that, we can always adjust speeds by using 4 to 20 milliampere signals, etc. It was not very convincing to the end user because the end user wanted to know in his own terms. And that's where actually DVK scored, because we were always talking in terms of the language that the paper user would understand, the paper machinery manufacturer would understand. So actually, in case of the Rayalaseema paper mills, the order was being placed by Rayalaseema Paper, but entire technical discussion took place with Jessup, and as luck would have it, the order came to DVK against intense competition. In case of Bhadrachalam paper boards, the paper machine was being supplied by Eastern Paper Mills, and they had a tie-up with a company, Italian company called Over Mechanica. And there also, the order was being placed, of course, by Eastern Paper Mills there as part of an integrated system which they were supplying to Bhadrachalam Paper Board. In both these cases, we had to get the approval from both sides, from both the manufacturer of the machine as well as the end user. And in case of Bhadrachalam Paper Board, it was a very professional company. We had to go through a lot of discussions, and again we scored because of the terminologies that we could make them understand in their own language. We had the very big USP on our side. A gentleman named NSR Murthy, he was considered to be one of the legends of the paper industry drives in those days. He used to work for DBK, and as a result, a lot of people had not only confidence in DBK, they had a lot of confidence in Mr. Murthy. And that's how we landed up with both these orders. And both were very successfully commissioned and implemented. And therefore, that was the start of very big business for DBK in the area of paper mill drives. The application of drives was not only in the paper machines. As you know, paper industry has got other applications. One was the rewinders. The rewinders was equipment where they would actually take the roll from the paper machine and rewind it to ensure that there are no cuts and that the lengths are all actually proper. And then it would go to a cutter where it would be cut to the sizes that they would require. So drives found application both in rewinder as well as in case of the cutter. And while cutter was a more simpler application, the rewinder was a pretty complicated application, because there, as the rewinding took place and as the winding took place and as the diameter started increasing, the speed of the drive had to change. And that was quite a challenge. So in case of the rewinder, of course, we used to have the issue of the fact that as the winder started winding and as the diameter started increasing, the speed has to be adjusted accordingly. And therefore, it was a decently complicated application and needed a lot of calculations before one could arrive at the right solution. So the market for paper mills started developing pretty fast, and I would say that at that point of time, between the mid-70s to mid-80s, huge number of paper capacity was added. A lot of paper mills came up, both, as I said, small, medium and large, and the large ones expanding and some new paper mills coming. And at that time, we could very confidently say that DBK had close to over 50% of the market share, while the other share of the market was mainly from Siemens and Nalco and Katlahama, and ABB was just making its entry at that time and had come in with a lot of reputation of having done a lot of paper mill jobs outside India. And when they came into the market, I think they also swamped the market, and the market started to grow pretty fast. In the next episode, I will move on to other areas like cement, steel, and other applications of drives. Thank you.